Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, so I'm joined with a fantastic trio of guests here to talk about why Bitcoin matters in an AI era. Um, AI, artificial intelligence, and Bitcoin has not really been two topics that are discussed very much in the Bitcoin community, but they are discussed a lot in the broader blockchain Bitcoin crypto space. So I'll let my guests introduce themselves really quickly. Ilya, Marguerite, and Brittany. Welcome, and let's start with Ilya. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Hey, yeah, I mean, as I was just speaking, but I'm co-founder of Near Protocol, and previously I was actually an AI researcher. I worked at Google Research, leading a deep learning team around question answering, machine translation, and various other topics. And I am a co-author on the paper "Attention is All You Need," which introduced transformers-based technology for ChatGPT, Midjourney, and all the other kind of recent AI innovation.
All right, Brittany, you are executive director of Stacks. Tell me a bit about that.
I'm not the chairman of the Stacks Foundation board, so I've served as the executive director, launching the Stacks Foundation, and have been a long time sort of looking at the intersection of new technologies' impact on blockchain. And the latest sort of deep dive has been on artificial intelligence and how it can be used to support things like DeFi and better consumer experiences.
Welcome, Marguerite.
Hey, everybody. So CEO of Blockade Labs. We use generative AI to create immersive worlds and immersive art. I previously started my career, I'd say my professional career really kicked off around 2013 I was a fine artist, a gallery director, and I stumbled into the world of Bitcoin. Family was mining Bitcoin. It started with GPUs, I think back in 2012 or 13. And then, they were moving up to ASICs, and I had to figure out what was going on with these decentralized networks of computers racing to solve cryptographic puzzles. And how would you creatively imagine what that looks like? And so I was one of the earliest creatives to combine art with actual blockchain technology that were essentially community challenges or treasure hunts, hiding Bitcoin private keys into the art medium itself. And with that career, I've hit up against all kinds of different bottlenecks in what's possible or what's difficult for a independent creator and then game studios. And what I found was generative AI really solved some of the content problems. It solves a lot of problems, but specifically for creatives or people who have really big, ambitious projects, content is the one that will really get you as far as expense goes, especially when you're trying to work with emergent technologies. So anyways, we pivoted from doing crypto type experiments in games to trying to solve these harder problems for the larger developer ecosystem.
Yeah, so welcome. There's a bunch of different ways we could go with this topic of AI, from AI agents to smart contract automation to the future of compute. We were talking a bit backstage about AI agents. I think that's a very interesting place to start. We've mostly imagined that artificial intelligence agents, we've mostly imagined humans interacting with these decentralized systems. But in a future where we have AI agents, this could look a little bit different. I'll open it up. What do we mean when we talk about AI agents interacting with blockchains? And then what might that actually look like?
Yeah, well, I think one way you can think about it is a simple example is thinking about machine-to-machine payments. So that's like your AI agent transacting on your behalf to do certain tasks for you. Right now, that would actually be pretty difficult to do, to sort of like send out an automation to be able to transact on the blockchain on your behalf. You'd have to give it your keys. You'd have to do some limits. Your agent right now can't go use your credit card. They're not like going and verifying things. There's a lot of checks in place to try and prevent bots from using other people's credit cards. So in a simple way, you can think about, blockchains have this, especially Bitcoin, it just has this ubiquitous financial system that no matter who you're transacting with, you could pay them Bitcoin. Your agent can pay Bitcoin on behalf. They don't need a Stripe terminal. They don't need a certain currency exchange. It's sort of a universal standard in which you could use. And I think that's really interesting of just thinking about when you want to do a lot of tasks that are part of like almost like a recipe of steps, having an autonomous agent do that on behalf, make the transactions, even telling it how to negotiate and bid on certain services at certain price points, and then being able to limit the amount of currency that they may have in their wallet, so they're not necessarily just continuously spending on something. So I think it's interesting from a consumer perspective, but also when you think about things like DeFi or trading or being active in some of these networks, which requires a lot of attention and constantly being at the ready to pull the trigger on a transaction. I think that is really exciting to think about agents in that aspect.
And I'm going to throw a question to Marguerite. Marguerite, you mentioned that you have some interesting thoughts on how AI agents might interact or integrate into gameplay and generate autonomous worlds. Can you expand on that for me and tell me where your head's at there?
So I think that the ability to have this sort of game director that can sit between an application layer and your resource layer, that such as assets that could be on Bitcoin, becomes really interesting when you're thinking about balancing gameplay and the ability for what should be available at different times and introduced into a game or application environment to keep the game exciting, and thinking about both the financial resources and also the game item resources. And we've seen various blockchain games attempt to do this, where it's a persistent game that is lasting over time. Persistent meaning the game state is always happening. And blockchain really supports that sort of 24/7 game evolution that can be occurring. And then you introduce the assets that can be dynamic, interacting with themselves, introduce AI agents that can be NPCs populating these worlds, tracking them, ledgers of what's happening with these histories of assets, and then the tradability factor. Like, I think that the marketplace of these types of assets, one, they could probably be interoperable in various ways, but even in just an own autonomous universe becomes really interesting for the thing that's really beautiful about crypto is all these crypto assets and putting them to use and having the utility in the virtual experiences.
Yeah. So, Margaret, you've also done a lot of work in the AI and NFT art. We might use the broad term metaverse creation here. One interesting thing that AI kind of superpowers is the process and timeline to go from an idea to executing that idea. In fact, maybe even automating that idea going forwards. Both Brittany and Marguerite, could you talk about how AI in the creative process can improve that flow and idea to execution, especially when it comes to creating digital media?
We're actually at Blockade working on something pretty neat, which is starting from any 2D arbitrary sized image, one that you could have created with Midjourney, or it could be the avatar of one of your favorite collectibles that you have, and being able to turn it into a 360 immersive art piece instantly, based off that initial 2D asset. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but or at least functions, but if once people can have just their own 360 world on demand based on content that they're excited about, I think you're going to see a lot more creators building experiences and communities involved, and the idea of UGC, user-generated content, flowing from the technical concepts that your developers are creating, and then the content output of building with those pieces with the art that you're inspired by. So anyways, I'm excited about that because I'm directly in that space, and like we have this technology already working. Now it's a matter of just bringing it to product, and bringing it to product is always a little bit more of a challenge than it working locally.
Yeah, Brittany, I'll invite you to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that this applies not only to NFTs, but even seeing code come to life. I don't know if you've played around with any tools like these models that are open source that are out there, or even things like OpenAI. If you have an idea of something you want to see to exist in the world, you can actually get coached by this model to help either write that code or experiment with different UX paradigms, or create like mock-ups. Like, there's so many great tools that are out there. And I think this is fantastic for the blockchain space because we have so many developers who maybe have ideas, they want to experiment. It can be quite a heavy lift to learn different programming languages. Maybe they don't feel like they're ready, but by having these sort of AI tools to help coach them from idea to reality, we're going to get a lot more creative ideas out there. And I also think it'll help lower the barrier for people who want to create to at least be able to prototype very quickly. I don't think AI is going to like take creatives' jobs. I think if anything, it's just going to open up more creativity out into the world by powering with these tools.
Welcome back, Ilya. I remember, I think I caught you were headed towards talking, I imagine, a bit about smart contract automation and AI agent interaction with smart contracts. I hope your connection is back in good, but I know you and Near Protocol have looked into this. What are your thoughts on AI's role or integration with smart contract systems on these decentralized networks?
Yeah, I think there is actually a spectrum of potential use cases here. It starts with actually just simplifying the experience of interacting with smart contracts, because at the end, smart contracts are just a piece of logic and some state ownership. And the front ends kind of interfaces we use right now are just one way to interact with them. And you can imagine that having actually a natural language interface or even on-the-fly generated user experience with which you can interact with one or multiple smart contracts is something that can unlock a lot of the additional use cases that people right now maybe would need to go and write a script or write custom logic to do, right? I mean, the kind of multi-sender smart contract that like multi-batch smart contracts were kind of an interesting unlock. And so we have like few projects that are doing that, pretty much providing a natural language interface, including, for example, for minting NFTs, where you can like right away go and describe like, hey, mint an NFT of this, and it goes, generates an image, uploads it, and then mints an NFT and returns you already NFT, right? So like that kind of whole experience end to end is just the one line of request. Now, moving further, you can have indeed agents that are interacting with smart contract as an economic agent, right? Being that they're trading, they are seeing opportunity, being liquidity providers, etc. And there's obviously a variety of how that works. Kind of for DeFi use cases, they can be using external information to make decisions, for example. But I think the most interesting, and we're probably furthest from this actually happening, is how do we bring the agent fully kind of become autonomous, where you give them a mission and some resources, and now they are able to interact with kind of using these resources to pay now people and other agents to do work toward that mission, right? And the way I describe it is like toward the AI CEO or AI president is actually turning what decentralized autonomous organizations were trying to bring, like the idea that community is able to pull resources kind of around a mission and then being able to coordinate to achieve this, but actually putting AI into it as a way to coordinate that. And kind of my thesis here is that DAOs actually failed because at the end you still need a coordinator. You still need somebody who has the context and can provide kind of specific jobs and kind of contributions to different people. And kind of DAO doesn't have a slot for that, right? Like it's supposed to be like everybody's equal. And so having a decentralized kind of AI model that is doing that is actually very powerful, because you can have a transparent why it made this decision, how it made the decision. You can even give it feedback to like change its decision-making process by providing more training data. And you can have stakeholder token holders to pretty much vote off and veto some decisions if they don't agree with kind of how model behaves. But I think so kind of zooming out, like the spectrum is wide. There's a lot of people experimenting with this as we kind of started. I know I was breaking up. There's a lot of people experimenting with like AI agents being financial agents that are interacting and paying each other, as Brittany mentioned. But I think we'll see kind of this transition interface to financial agent to kind of autonomous agent on chain, and as more use cases develop.
Yeah, and I'll throw a question to Brittany, kind of jumping off of that. Ilya, you mentioned this idea of DAOs or decentralized ways of organizing on chain. I know Brittany has, I think you've written a bit on this, where we can use an AI agent as a coordinator. Could you expand a little bit more on this topic and what you think that future might look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think these, AI agents can do things that we tell them to do. They can learn quickly. They're very cheap to hire. It isn't, you don't need to get them up to speed over weeks and months. They're available 24/7. I think there's a lot of advantages that in some ways, like people wish they could be that efficient with their learning and their time and bring things to market. And I think that these agents will provide a really great way to do that. Not only that, we can actually open source and crowdsource the training of these models. So to Ilya's point, it can be very transparent of what the model's logic is and what, if you put in the same output or the same input, are you getting the same output? And so I think being able to crowdsource better, models around how should we think about governance in the blockchain space. There might be some common models that lots of people could use to do that, all the way up to things like maybe that are more profitable around like what are the best trading strategies or how should we be thinking about token distribution. Just coming from the foundation side at Stacks, it's like there's a lot of these decisions that we made over the course of bringing Stacks to market that peers in the crypto space are trying to figure out now. I would love to train models. Hey, here's everything that we've learned. How would you do things differently in the future, or how could you take new inputs or new game theory and apply that? So it will kind of go hand in hand with like past experience, great research, and a lot of inputs to make agents like very powerful. So I'm very excited about what can happen there. But I do think it's going to take a lot of trial and error. I think we're going to get a lot of bad responses before we get good responses. So I advise people just start playing around with it now, because the more that you can figure out how to prompt it and kind of get the outputs you want, the better long-term success we'll have in using these tools. Not when they're perfect, but starting out when they're iterative like this.
One last question, I'll throw it to Marguerite to close us out. Brittany, you mentioned a bit about token incentive and AI, and I believe I heard Marguerite touch on this topic with regards to AI compute. Marguerite, can you just very briefly, in under a minute, kind of talk about how token incentive could manage the AI compute and modeling challenge?
Absolutely. So actually something I've spent a bit of time designing and thinking about is how can we use this natural like DeFi space that we have in crypto, where users are doing all kinds of activities that may not be beneficial, like this user-driven behavior that may actually yield no fruits that are worthwhile. We can actually create design incentives where, for example, like at Blockade, curating our art data set from generations and have a rating system in which you're rewarded as a user for giving good data. This helps overall like improve our model and keep it evergreen while we do continue to create new data for the model. This just curation process helps with that feedback loop. And actually, and even thinking about AI hallucinations, AI is who imagine things incorrectly and then they think it's correct and then act accordingly, terrifies me if I'm going to give an AI agent any sort of finances. So, and you have also instances of the Devin, if you've heard of Devin, this AI that is posting on like various forums, recruiting human users for work because it doesn't know how to do something. So it's going to go pay people instead to do work that it's been tasked with. I just think that we're a long way from having really smart, savvy, financial, economic AI agents doing things with real money in a way that we all feel comfortable about. But the feedback system loop incentive programs that we can build into our crypto communities, I do think will be a future of DeFi that we'll see. And we'll actually see then, instead of this Ponzi schemes, a more healthy feedback loop.
All right. Thank you so much, Marguerite, Brittany, and Ilya. I'm Charlie Spears of Blockspace Media. I believe my colleague Will Foxley is actually probably on next. So thank you so much to the Sachs Foundation and the Building on Bitcoin live stream team. Talk to you later.
Thank you.